2008 Mercedes GL450 intake manifold replacement. I'm Brian Eslick from How-To Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the steps of replacing that. So we're going to get started by removing the strut bracing here. And the first thing we need to do is pop this little cover off. So you'll pop these little clips right here in the corner with a little screwdriver or pry bar, like this. And then you'll lift straight out and remove that. And the reason why is we couldn't get to the bolts back here in the back on this. You're going to need a 14mm female torque socket like this and a 16mm wrench. And then go ahead and remove the bolts. After removing those two bolts, you'll remove the 10mm bolt here, and then you'll do the same process on this side and remove these two bolts, nuts and bolts. Once you get it all unbolted, you'll just lift and then slide it out like that. Set it aside. Now we're going to pop the top engine cover off, clip the switch in the back, pull off the snorkels on the left and right side, front cover, pull up and pull out towards you, set aside. Next you'll pull the fresh air inlet off, and then you'll grab the air cleaner itself and just lift straight up and pop it and pull it out. Now that the air cleaner is off, I'm going to go ahead and remove the fresh air inlet pipe for the secondary air injection off completely and set that aside. Now we can go ahead and grab the snorkels here and just pop them off the little inserts in this and remove them and set them aside. So now we need to get started removing the wiring harness. We're going to unbolt everything from the wiring harness and kind of lift it up out of our way. And to do that, we need to plug all 8 of the coils. So you're going to need a flat blade screwdriver like this. You'll put it in right here. Give it a little twist, and once the little gray tab pops out, then you can just squeeze it and then pull the coil connector off. And you'll do that for all 8 of them. Now that the coils are unplugged, I'm going to work on the passenger side first, and I'm going to start right back here. And there's a ground strap, so you're going to remove the 10mm female socket torque bolt here. So go ahead and remove that and set it aside, and then the main plastic wire loom, and there's a couple spots where it has a 10mm also. You go ahead and remove the bolts there and just follow it around until you see another one, which is right here. Go ahead and remove that. Then if you follow it around in the back, there's going to be another support 10mm female torque right here you can remove. After you get those unbolted, you're starting to get some freedom in the harness now. You're going to come around to the front and you're going to unplug all the cam sensors. So you'll unplug all of them. And then the wiring harness should start coming up, and also there may be a few zip ties you may have to cut off, and just keep track of where those zip ties are, because you're going to need to put those back on. You don't want these harnesses flaring around. So also right here there's going to be a little metal clip. If you pry that off of the screwdriver, then the whole harness will come out like that. So you're also going to unplug the vacuum switches here, everything right here. And the idea is to get this wiring harness free to come up. So anything you see right here, just unplug it. So you're going to unplug as much as you possibly can. There's going to be some wires that go down to the alternator stuff. You don't need to unplug that. Just unplug it and just get as much slack as you can in the harness over here. And the next step we're going to do is we're going to pop off the PCM like this, so that it just lifts up out of these little rubber grommets. And we're going to take off the bracket here and here, take those torque bolts out, and we're going to set these brackets aside. You don't want to mix them up because there's a left and a right side. One of the things I wanted to share with you guys, you're going to need quite a few bungee cords to you're going to hold this wiring harness up as high as you can. Every time you get something disconnected, you'll start kind of lifting it up and making clearance and room for the intake to come in and out. I also wanted to share with you this tool I picked up from Milwaukee. It's the M12 3/8 drive electric ratchet, and this thing works pretty freaking slick. You know, I was a little hesitant to convert over to electric power, but now that I did, I'm very, very thankful I did. This thing has been really great for me. I'll leave a link for this in the description of the video. That way, if you guys want to pick it up, you can get that. The bracket on this side is held on with all the clips and stuff, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave it hooked to the wiring harness. Now that we got those two brackets off, I'm going to go ahead and remove the torque bolt here. Now that the wiring harness is up a little higher, I'm going to go ahead and unplug all the fuel injectors, all 8 of them. So pop the little clips up the same way you did on the coils, and then just work your way around, and you can lift the harness up and come from the back side to get to the injectors, and go ahead and unplug all 8 of them. So after getting all the injectors unplugged, now as you can see the wiring harness is coming up higher and higher. So go ahead and unplug the secondary air injection and just squeeze the little tabs and push the connector off. And then after that, we're going to do the same thing we did here where we started removing the bolts and stuff. So we're going to find the bolts on this harness here and go ahead and remove the bolts. And you just follow the plastic little guides around, and every time you run across one of these, go ahead and remove it. I believe there's 3 or 4 of them here, so go ahead and remove those. And then also we're going to start popping these hoses out of their little brackets and looms like this. This is the evap purge line, and we're going to pop these off right off the vent tube here, right here. And then we're going to start disconnecting all the sensors here too, like we did the other side, and getting as much room as we can. So just follow them around and do the same thing. Unplug them all, and there's that same bracket as before that you can pry off. So as you can see, I'm unplugging as much as I can. There's going to be some wires that go down like to the crank sensor and stuff like that. You're not going to be able to unplug it. We're just trying to create as much slack as we possibly can. So once you get all this in the front disconnected, the map sensor here has a vacuum line going to it, and it runs down to the front of the intake. So you want to go ahead and unplug that vacuum hose. Okay, now that I got that vacuum line I was talking about unplugged for the map sensor, now you can see I can lift it up even higher now. And you got the vent line right here unplugged. So now I can actually flip a lot of this up pretty high out of the way. So as I do that, I'm going to flip this up as high as I can like this, and I'm going to route my bungee cord around it and hold this up out of my way. Now right here on the fuel injection rail is a plug. If you put a flat blade screwdriver right in between right here and give it a little twist, there's a clip right there, and then you can pull it and pop it off like that. And then you can squeeze the tab and disconnect it. Now on the back side of this harness here, right here, there's going to be a Torx bolt here and here. Go ahead and remove those 2, and that'll help lift the back of the wiring harness up. So now I got most of the wiring harness unplugged and disconnected, and I added more bungee cords over here, kind of holding everything out of the way. All right, the next thing we need to do is we need to remove the fuel rail and the injectors out of the car. And the first thing we need to do is, right here is the main fuel line coming in, so you need to take the 17 millimeter fitting here and put a wrench on it and crack it free, and take the line off. And I just tucked the line out of the way over here. After that, you're going to remove there's going to be 4 torque bolts here, female Torx. You're going to remove them here, back here in the corner, the opposite corner, and then right here. Remove those 4 bolts. Okay, now that you got the bolts out of the 4 corners, you can take a pry bar like this and put it underneath the fuel rail and pop the injectors out like this on both sides. Now you can go ahead and lift the whole fuel rail out of the car. Now that you got the fuel rail out, you can take the bolt out right here on this bracket, and that'll help release some of the tension here. You can also go ahead and take this bracket out. So once you get this bolt out here, take these 2 Torx out, and this whole little ear will come out, and that'll give you some more room to disconnect the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body down below. Okay, now that the bracket's off, now you can maneuver the wiring harness around a little easier. And there's a sensor here you're going to unplug, and then you can maneuver it out of the way and reach around the back and unplug your mass airflow sensor. Now that I got my mass airflow sensor unplugged and that little connector, little sensor below, the intake runner sensor there, I'm going to go ahead and lower my bungee cord down, lower the wiring harness back down, and go ahead and just remove the mass airflow sensor from out of the car. Okay, to get the mass airflow sensor out, right here is these little plastic tabs, and they have these little ears that hook on these little metal aluminum brackets here. So to get them out, you just hit your thumbs on the corners and you flare it, 1 on each side here. And once you get them off, then you just kind of rock the mass airflow sensor. It's just got a press fit in there, and you pull it off. Okay, now that the mass air is out, I'm going to go ahead and flip the harness up, and right underneath there is going to be another intake runner sensor. Right there, we're going to See, it's right back there. We're going to unplug that one too, and then we're going to unplug this main this gang plug here, right here. So just squeeze the tabs and pull it off. Okay, now that this is all unplugged back here, we need to unplug the brake vacuum booster hose, and they just have these two little squeeze tabs, and you squeeze on the left and right side, and then you pull. Once you squeeze it, you just pull straight off. And you're just going to tuck it back here in the back. Now I'm going to go ahead and lift my wiring harness back up and bungee cord it out of the way. Now I'm going to go ahead and remove all the torque bolts. So there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them on the passenger side, and there's going to be 5 more on the driver's side. Go ahead and just remove all those torque bolts. Okay, now that the manifold is unbolted, you can lift it up a little bit, and we need to remove that vacuum line right there. Okay, now that you get that vacuum hose off, you can lift the manifold up like this, and you can start pulling it towards you. And now there's going to be the throttle cables can be plugged in back here, so you're going to have to reach around the back and unplug it. But now that when you pull the manifold back, the further you pull it towards the front of the car, the more room you have back there. So once you get it going out, you can reach around the back and unplug the throttle body. Also on the back of the cylinder head on the passenger side is the PCV valve, and there's a rubber hose here. You can go ahead and unplug that too, and it just pushes on, so you just wiggle it off. So you just pop it off right here. And right here on the back of it, as you can see, I got the manifold 85% out of the car, and there's the connector for the throttle body. Just once you get that unplugged, the rest of the intake will come right out. Okay, now that the intake manifold is out of the car, you're going to go ahead and clean up your surfaces right here. Make sure you don't knock the debris and dirt into the cylinder head. And then you also want to look with a flashlight and thoroughly look and make sure that nothing fell inside in the valves here. So, and if anything fell in, you need to fish it out and clean it out as best you can. And also you want to inspect the wiring harness here for the knock sensors underneath here. And it's really common for rodents to crawl underneath the intake, and they'll chew the wiring. So you want to inspect that and make sure that there's no damage to the wiring before you put your new intake back in. So I wanted to share with you the replacement intake manifold part numbers here. I will also be linking the parts and tools that I'm using in this video in the description. And here are the intake manifold gaskets. You're also going to need to order fuel injector O-rings for the bottom of the injectors. We're going to change those out before we put them back in. So now what I'd like to do is take the old manifold and the new manifold, lay them side by side, and you're going to transfer over any parts that don't come with the new one. The new ones come with quite a bit of stuff, with quite a bit of the sensors and the vacuum ports and stuff like that. They come with quite a bit of it, but anything it doesn't come with, you need to transfer over to your new manifold. One of the things you'll notice about the when you go to transfer your parts over, the ports don't come threaded, and these bolts are designed to self-tap into there and tighten up. So even a couple of them on top up here there won't be any thread holes. And if you look on the original one, how it looks like it's threaded, but really these bolts are designed to self-tap into them. So not to worry, you just put them on there, run them in there. You just run them in there, just make sure you don't get them crooked, and then tighten them down. I wanted to share with you why you're most likely replacing the manifolds is because this little vacuum pod right here, this little arm is supposed to be attached right here, and they're made out of plastic and they break off, and these little arms control airflow in the inside of the intake manifold by moving these doors open and close. Okay, we need to prep our gaskets, and the way we do is that we just find the proper matching gasket, and if you look, they have these little round ports here and here on the end, and on your gasket they have them here, and they have these little tangs. They press around that, and that's what actually holds the gasket in place. So once you get them lined up, you'll just press it on, and that'll hold the gasket in place. And you'll do that for left and right. And I've also had to glue these in before. Sometimes these tabs don't hold that well, depending if you're lucky or not, if they hold. And there's also going to be one in the middle too. To make things easier going back in, you can leave this portion of it off. And I don't know if I mentioned how they come off. They just have a little tab right here that you flare, and then you rotate it out like that, and it'll come off. So you can put the intake manifold back in with this off, and then when you put it, when it's inside the car, you can just rotate it around like that, and then line it up and push it on like that. So it's pretty simple to take on and off. So I'm gonna leave it off right now, for right now, and I'm gonna go ahead and put the intake manifold back in the car. So we're gonna stab it in with the throttle body side in first, and then the first thing we're gonna do is plug in our throttle body. So you nose it in like this first, then reach back and plug in your throttle body sensor first, and then you're gonna rotate it around and then drop it down onto the ports. So now that we've got the intake back in the car, you want to look down and make sure that the gasket didn't fall off, and you want to lift it up a little bit and kind of look and see. As you can see, mine has actually fallen off the little ports, but you can see it's lined up. That doesn't, as long as it's lined up, is all that matters. And if it's not, you can use a screwdriver or whatever down the ports and kind of maneuver the gasket and push it in place, and you'll do that for both sides. And you're also going to make sure that nothing is underneath or pinched underneath the manifold as you do this. Once you're satisfied that it's on there, then you can put the 10 bolts that went in there that held the manifold on. Go ahead and put those in and run them down so they're snug, and then you're going to torque them down in a crisscross pattern. So you'll start in the middle, so you go 1 here, 2, and then 3, 4, and just keep doing it in a crisscross pattern. And they're all torqued down to about 9 foot-pounds, not very much. Also, before you put the manifold all the way down and cinch it all down, don't forget to plug in the 2 vacuum lines that went on the front right here. So you'll lift it up, put the vacuum lines on. Now that the 2 vacuum lines are plugged in, all the bolts are torqued on the intake manifold itself. The throttle body is plugged in. The next step we're going to do is remove all the O-rings from the bottom ports of the injectors here, and install the new O-rings, and I'll link up the parts for all these. Okay, after changing out all the O-rings, you want to put a little bit of grease, a little silicone-based grease on the O-rings. That'll help slide it into place without pinching the O-rings. You don't want to put any other type of grease. If it's not silicone-based, it could cause the seals to swell, and you don't want that to happen. Okay, just before we put the fuel injectors back in, go ahead and plug in the intake runner sensors back here, because they're kind of hard to get to with the rail in there. So you can go ahead and plug those in now. Go ahead and plug both of them in on the left and right side. Then you're gonna, after you get that done, you're gonna put with the rail towards the back, slide it in, and put it in over in the ports like that. Once you get them all lined up, all the ports, and make sure that none of the wires are pinched underneath or anything, then you'll push it down and you'll start the bolts. And like I said before, these bolts are not going to have threaded holes, so you're going to have the bolts self-tap in there. So you just run them down till they're snug, and that's it. Okay, now that the fuel rail is re-secured back in, I'm going to go ahead and unbungee the wiring harness and let it lay back down on top of the manifold. And I'm going to start working in the back and plugging in. So I'll start with the injector, since it's right back here. I'll go ahead and plug this one in. It comes from back here, so I'll go ahead and I'll plug that one in, and then I'll lower it down, and then I'll start working in the back. So now I got the wiring harness back down, I'm going to put this snorkel back over the throttle body and snap it into place. So I got it routed back there, and I'm just going to put it on the bottom first, and then rotate it to the top back onto it. You might actually hear it click. Actually, it didn't click, but you give it a little wiggle to make sure it's secure. And then after you get that on, you can take the PCV vent hose here and put it back on the PCV valve back here in the back. Make sure that's secure. Now you can go ahead and plug in the vacuum hose for the brake booster. And then you can plug in the main gain plug right here. Plug that back in. Also, this main vent line right here, it goes all the way through. It popped off in the process of doing that, and it plugs in on the back, so it looks like this. It'll go right there, and you'll plug that in. Next, you can go ahead and plug in the mass airflow sensor, and then you're going to rotate it. So you're going to put it in kind of at an angle like this, and then twist it downwards until these little tabs lock into place. After that, you can line up the wiring harness right here and re-bolt the two bolts there. Okay, now that the mass air is plugged in, I'm going to start right here and plug the injectors in, all four of them on the driver's side here. And then I will position the main harness here and go ahead and put the bolts back in and secure it. And then I'm going to plug in all the coils. And after you plug everything back in, you want to flip these switches back in too, the little clips. So we'll do that. And then one of the most important things is there's that little ground strap. Is don't forget to bolt the little ground strap back in. So after getting the main harness here re-secured back down, all 4 of the coils and all 4 of the injectors plugged back in, you can take the main connector here and reconnect it to the fuel rail right here, slide it on. And then once it's on, then you can find the corresponding plug and plug it in. Resecure that. And then now what we're going to do is the little bracket that went back here, we'll resecure that and then secure the wiring harness that bolted to the bracket back into place. Now the vent tubes and stuff, you can go ahead and plug those back in. And then the little catches where they would resecure everything. And then you can go ahead and bolt the 2 bolts that go in the manifold here to hold the bracket on for the computer. Go ahead and bolt that back up. Okay, now that the bracket's resecure, now what we can do is go ahead and reinstall our fuel line. So go ahead and mount it on there and start it up and tighten it up. You don't have to super bear down on it, just make it nice and snug. Okay, so now what we're going to do is just anything that we unplugged in the front here to make slack, we're going to reinstall that. So go ahead and plug it, everything we unplugged. So the good news is the wiring harness usually lays almost, lays pretty much exactly the way the plugs go. So, and I'm pretty sure these plugs only will plug into each individual. You can't plug them into the wrong thing. So go ahead and plug all this back in. And if you cut off any of the zip ties or anything, go ahead and reinstall some new zip ties to hold the wiring harness back into place. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift the computer up a little bit here and kind of maneuver this side of the wiring harness back into position where these mount to the little tabs here, kind of line everything up. So I started back here in the back and I started the bolt, and then I went ahead and plugged in all the coils all the way along, and then I went ahead and secured the main harness with the torque bolts here and here, and I'm going to make sure you get the ground strap back here in the back. Now that that's all secure, you can tighten it all up. So now I'm going to just lift the computer back up, and I'm going to reach around the back side and I'm going to plug in all the injectors. Once the injectors are plugged in, I'm going to go ahead and resecure the bolt right here on the top of the manifold that holds the wire loom down. Now that that's secure, I'm going to go ahead and put the aluminum bracket that held the computer back on right here. Now I'm going to resecure the computer by putting it over and just pushing it on. Now I'm going to plug in the secondary air injection pump. Now I'm just going to plug in all the cam sensors and everything that I touched over here. I'll resecure it all. And any zip ties that I cut, I'll resecure those too. Okay, now I'm just going to start in the back again, and with a flashlight just work my way around and double check that everything is plugged in all the way around on the one side, and then I'll switch over to the opposite side and do the exact same thing. And once I'm secured it, I'm confident that everything is plugged back in their little catches, then we'll put the air cleaner back on. So now we're going to put the air cleaner back on. This portion of the air cleaner has to fit snugly around the mass airflow sensor. So I'll stab that area first by putting the tail of it in, kind of nose it in first like that. And then it has these little rubber grommets right here. And these catches, once you've got them all lined up, you'll push them straight down on there. You'll know you have the air cleaner on right when it's really easy to snap the little clip in the back on. And also it fits firmly around the PCM right here. Next, we'll take the fresh air inlet pipe for the secondary air injection pump and put that on and hook it up to the air cleaner here. Then we'll go ahead and install the 2 air snorkels that they mount underneath. So you'll look underneath for it. The little ports, plug those in there and then plug them in both sides. Then we can take the front half of the cover here, and these little clips in the back of it are going to mount inside there. So you got to stab them inside there. So they'll kind of go in like that, and once they're stabbed in there like that, then you rotate it down and you just pop them in the corners like that into place. Now we're going to install our crossmember bracing. It slides through on the passenger side over there, so it's going to slide through like that into place, and then you'll rotate the side onto the driver's side down into place, and you'll put the bolts through, and you'll do the bolts through on the opposite side. Also on the passenger side of it is the 10mm bolt that held the shielding down. So once you get all those installed, go ahead and tighten them all down. Okay, now we can put this cover back on. These little serrated teeth they kind of stab in the bottom of the box down there. So once you get them stabbed in the bottom, then you just rotate it into place, and you take the clip and you pop them on, and that'll complete the job of replacing the intake manifold on a 2008 Mercedes GL450. I'm going to leave links in the description for all the parts and tools that I used in this video. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos, encourage you to subscribe, invite you to head over to the howtoautomotive.com website for more valuable videos like this, and thank you again for watching.